Depth charts are out. A bit of a surprise at receiver, a playmaker that we thought was going to be a starter, not listed with the ones.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for making this your first stop. Thank you for making Locked On part of your daily Badger listens. Today's episode, we are talking about depth chart surprises. Some interesting stuff at receiver, defensive line, and a starting center that's back in the mix that we weren't sure was going to be your week one. How much of this offense is implemented week one? We're going to talk about that. Player most helped by this new scheme. And do you save plays for Alabama? We're going to get into all of that on today's Locked On Badgers. Great guest, great friend of the show. Hasn't been on in a while. Coach Anderson from the Dairy Raid is back. Coach, I want to start here. Depth charts drop today. That means we are a couple days away. I think two big things I want to hit on. The first is Chris Brooks Jr. listed as the starting receiver opposite of Vinny Anthony. A lot of people from spring on had penciled Jayden Ballard, the Ohio State import, into that spot. Thoughts on that? How surprising is that to you? Much ado about nothing. What are your thoughts there?
I would say I'm not surprised because of what Chris Brooks brings to the offense outside of what Jayden Ballard does. His blocking ability is huge. And the easiest way for you to endear yourself to a new offensive coordinator, especially an offensive coordinator who is a run-first guy, is to be a receiver who is a willing blocker. I think also, obviously, the injury to Tucker Ashcraft and the changes in the tight end depth has brought on the need to use the receivers a little more in some of those tight end-esque kind of roles. He's not going to be an inline tight end. He's not going to be doing anything crazy like that. But you're going to exchange some of those split flow reps, some of those motion to the flat reps and stuff like that that you would normally get with a tight end with him. And Jayden Ballard is, I hesitate to say a one-trick pony, but he's got one thing he's really good at, and that's to pump the ball downfield. That this could be an indication maybe that's not where the game plan is this week. I also think just because Chris Brooks is listed as a starter doesn't mean Jayden Ballard isn't going to get equal reps to him. I think the big thing we can take from the offense right now is Vinny Anthony is not going to leave the field unless he absolutely has to. And then the other three receivers in that group, Tretch, Ballard, and Chris Brooks, are going to kind of split that second receiver role, the third receiver once we get into 11 personnel. So it's not already declaring Jayden Ballard a bust. It's just showing that how much the coaching staff actually appreciates what Chris Brooks brings to the offense.
You brought up a point there that I didn't even think about, which is why I have you on the show, by the way. The injury to Tucker. Do you think that's an interesting element? Because Chris Brooks is the best blocking receiver on this team. Coaches have said that. Players have said that. Having been at practice, he's able to wall up linebackers pretty well. If Tucker Ashcraft doesn't get hurt, do you think maybe – not that Ballard would be the starter for sure, but do you think those two things are tied hand in hand?
I think they're definitely connected. We saw little things at the launch spring showcase. What were we calling it this year? Of using receivers in that kind of pseudo tight end esque kind of role, more like an H-back kind of role. So I knew that's somewhere that Coach Grimes was looking for in the offense. But I think when you're looking at your week one basic package, a lot of that tight end stuff was there. And if you're losing the guy that you want in that inline tight end spot, then you need to improvise a little bit, or then maybe go on to maybe a little bit later down the season plan with implementing the receivers a little bit more in that role.
So one of the things that I thought of when I saw Chris Brooks is, do you remember Jordan Frederick? Badger fans may not remember. So he was kind of just like a blocking receiver. And I thought at times that made it a little predictable, right? We're going to have this guy out here. If he's out here, there's only certain things we're probably going to do. Do you have any concerns that we have Chris Brooks in for a lot of his blocking ability? Now, he can catch the ball too, but then Jayden Ballard comes in and the defense is going to be tipped off a little bit. Any thoughts on how Grimes is going to navigate that?
I don't think so. I think for me, it's just like bringing in a second tight end. It's you can build an entire package around. If you just say you're gonna line up in a split formation to receive one receiver on one side, one receiver on the other side. Chris Brooks is coming in motion. You can build a ton of stuff off of that motion and use him as a blocker or use him as a jet sweep. He's not a jet sweep type guy, but use him to motion into the flat, motion in, and then run a drag route. He's a physical receiver, so he can run a lot of underneath stuff that we used to use tight ends for. So I think obviously when you have players of different body types and different playing ability, when you package them, there is a tendency to build tendencies, I guess, into it. But you just have to build balance around it. And if Jayden Ballard's coming in the field, you're expecting him to run the vertical routes, take the top off the defense. Well, then you better have the complementary stuff underneath. Better use him in play action situations where your eyes aren't going to be on him so much. So as long as you don't become predictable in situations, predictable in when certain personnel groups come out, I think back to old Badger offenses, it's 3rd and 7, and you see them come out, they're in a trips formation, and Jake Ferguson is the slot. They're going to run the little stick and go to him right there. That's what we do every single time. So as long as we don't get in a situation like that with these different personnel groups, it shouldn't be an issue. And that's actually one thing I really like about this offense is I can picture so many different groupings of just the first and the second team guys that I think it's going to allow Coach Grimes to be creative when he needs to be.
By the way, when you mentioned Ferguson and some of those very familiar routes that they ran again and again, I just flashed back to Notre Dame, to Penn State, to their safeties knowing exactly where we were going. It's just nightmare.
It wasn't rocket science. It really wasn't.
Nightmare fuel. The other thing I thought of the depth chart that I thought was really interesting is Jake Renfro listed at the starting center spot among those first 5. Definitely been a lot of conversation about how ready is he going to be? How many weeks might he be out? He was dinged up in practice, obviously. My first instinct, and this is again where you and I have very different perspectives on football. You're a coach. I'm a fan. Obviously, you also follow the Badgers, and I've coached basketball, so we have some overlap, but we look at this differently. My first thought is I would be hesitant to play him week 1. I would just be very nervous, and I'm curious if obviously that means he's pretty close. He's got to be pretty close to 100% if they're going to play him, right? You're not going to play him against Miami, Ohio week 1 with this schedule coming up unless you're not worried about it. Would you still err on the side of caution? Am I reading too much into this? What are your thoughts on Renfro being in those ones?
I think one, it shows you that his injury wasn't as bad as the narrative led us to believe. It's fall camp. He's a veteran. This is 6th fall camp. They can be cautious with him in camp. He knows what he's doing. So if they want to hold him out and give the backups some reps, and they certainly got some reps, and it sounds like from the reports they needed the reps, they gave him the rest. They got the backups in. They got them some quality snaps. And when it comes time to when the plays count on the field, he's back out on the field. I think you need to build the continuity with the offensive line from the beginning. And Renfro is it. Our offensive line over the last 2 years has been at its best when Jake Renfro is on the field, bar none, period. And so he has to be on the field if he's 100%. And I think you're hearing he's been on the field the last 4 or 5 practices, something like that. That means he's been at practice the last 2 weeks. He's fine. And if they don't think he's fine, they'll pull him out. They'll give him, if they can build a lead early, as the numbers are saying that we should be able to, maybe he gets a rest, but he also needs his reps too, because that was the downside of him resting in camp is maybe he needs Miami of Ohio to get up to speed.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. And especially I think your point about continuity as well. You have Bronner on one side, you have a new guard on Mendel on the other side, Hines' new tackle. That continuity at line is really important. I would like to think this is a great opportunity, to your point, to get him some reps and also work in Ryan Corey a little bit and also work in Kerry Kadonko a little bit just to get them some game reps, because I do think those spots need it, and Renfro has had an injury history. Either way, it's great news. Seeing him on that depth chart ready to play is phenomenal news for this offensive line. We're going to take a quick second, come back with Coach. How much of this offense is actually in? What can we expect from a learning curve perspective week 1 with the Jeff Grimes offense? Is it ready to go? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers with our great friend, Coach Anderson from the Dare Raid. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, football is almost here for the Badgers. It's already started. Week 0's already happened. So it is the perfect time to get started on FanDuel. NFL's coming up. You still have baseball going on. Any type of betting action you're looking for, live in-game parlays, futures, teasers, spreads. You can parlay multiple action together. You can find it all on FanDuel. Fast, easy, simple, quick payouts. User interface is super clean, so you can get to wherever you're trying to go right away, really simply, easy to navigate. It's phenomenal. It is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network for a reason. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com. Open the app today, FanDuel.com, to get started. All right, Coach, let me ask you this. I feel like when we talk about other teams on the schedule, we talk about maybe a Michigan or Ohio State's a good example. Well, they're replacing their coordinators. We talk a lot about learning curves for teams we're going to play. The Badgers have a new offensive coordinator. Obviously, we've talked about it. How implemented is this offense if you had to put a percentage on it?
The basic offense is in. It's been in, I was at this point 4 times. They installed it in spring ball. They installed a second time in spring ball. They reinstalled it in fall camp. They rep it towards the end of camp. The base offense is in. And since the day Jeff Grimes was hired, they had playbooks in the periods where they weren't allowed to work with the coaches. You can guarantee they were on a basketball court somewheres or somewheres repping this stuff all summer. They were running routes. So in terms of playbook, what they need for week 1, it's there. And then everything else that's not there yet is the add-ons to what the base package is, the plays that you put in response to what you expect from the opposing defense, what you expect when you actually see your plays rep live. So if I want to say the offense right now is at 100% installed, but by the end of the season, it could be 200% installed. So there's so much more that they can add, but what they need should already be there.
Will there be, I kind of wonder too, as they start to rep this and they get more reps in this offense against other teams that you haven't practiced against all spring, summer, fall, where do those efficiency gains come? Where do they get sharper within this offense? You mentioned some wrinkles. Some of that's going to be defense dependent. Like we're playing Michigan, there's specific things we're going to do for sure. But where can they internally grow within this offense over the course of this year specifically?
Well, there's so much of the offense that builds off of the reaction that the defense gives you. And it's easy to see a play on a page and know how it's supposed to work. It's a very different thing to see that play in practice on the field against an opponent. Also, when you get a chance to finally see film on your opponents and how their players are reacting, it may change the way that you interpret what you've already installed. You might have to change a route. You might have to change protection because of how we expect that defense to react. And then that also breeds creativity. Every play has a complementary play, has a counter. You can build off of that and you can just go. And as you get to know the players and as the players settle into the system and settle into the season, it allows you to add more, subtract where you need to, add where you need to. It's a constant growing process.
One of the things I was talking to Tucker Ashcraft actually in Platteville, and he mentioned in spring when they started running some of what Jeff Grimes wanted to do, they caught the defense off guard a lot. Deep shot to Ballard, gashed him up the middle. And he said by fall, the defense had caught up a little bit to what they were trying to run, right? Because they're going against it all the time. I feel like, I don't know if Badger fans, and it's no fault of their own because they haven't been at some of the practices and they haven't done the film study you've done. I think they're going to be surprised by the level of creativity. Sometimes when I say this offense is going to look more creative, I think jet sweep, tight end. There's a lot more to this Grimes offense. And I think Badger fans, in your opinion, are they going to be kind of taken aback by all the different kind of things that Jeff Grimes wants to do?
I think they're going to be the questions about, is this a pro style offense? This looks like a college offense. And I think that's maybe how we've been conditioned over the past 30 years. We ran Berry ball. It's rooted in the West Coast offense. All the coaches we had for the most part, were rooted in that system, the blocking schemes and the pass routes. But at the end of the day, it was kind of simple. And that was our identity. Our identity was what we've been talking about this whole offseason, getting back to the power football, power, run it down the middle, quick stuff, play action, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's part of pro style football. But watch the NFL today. Does that sound like the Kansas City Chiefs? Does that sound like the Philadelphia Eagles? I could go on. Does that sound like the offenses that we are hearing that are connected to this one? And so what you're seeing, one, college is where you go to find the creativity. The NFL steals out all that stuff and refines it and turns it into a nuclear weapon. But the mad scientists are in college. And so when the Badgers see this, they are going to be Badger fans see this. There's going to be no comparison to what we did before. Not saying we had a bad offense. I think Chris was a good play designer and we had some good stuff, but there are so many wrinkles that you can add that can make an offense become so much more dynamic. And that's something we only had when we had All-American running backs or Russell Wilson. So when you kind of dig deeper into your mind about how you design stuff, you can open up so much more. And that's what we're hearing. We're hearing so many names in spring and fall of people getting involved. And it's not surprising there's so many oars on the offensive side of the ball in the depth chart. Is there could be a lot of people getting involved. And that's not something we normally do. So it's going to be surprising. And for me, it's stimulating because it can get boring watching the same things over and over and over again, especially when it's not being effective. Now, if this creativity proves not to be effective, that's another story. But for what we're used to, it's going to be a different level.
Let me ask you this. This question came up from somebody that actually they were hoping you'd come back on the show. And they said, if you have Coach Anderson back on again, because they know the work you do on your channel, we're going to talk about that as well, the deep dives you take. He said, ask Coach, what's a player in this offense that's going to benefit most from this grime scheme?
I think the easy answer would be Billy Edwards. I think this scheme is a little bit better suited to his skill set than maybe he had at Maryland. Also, the pieces around him are going to help a little bit, at least with the offensive line. That's a big one. I think Lance Mason is going to be a real surprise in this offense because he played in a similar system at Missouri State, but what they asked him to do was limited. There was the route tree was a little bit smaller, and with as much as Grimes schemes for tight ends, he has the right skill set and the athletic ability to really shine, and he could be just a catch vulture. If there's PPR college fantasy leagues,
there are.
He could be the Wisconsin equivalent of that. Okay, we think of our great tight ends back in the day; they had 30 catches. I think we're going to see something more than that, and I think we're going to see maybe statistically wise one of the better tight ends we've had in a while, if it all comes together.
So I love you said that. I just did a show the other day with Rugiet, and I picked I had Mason as our second leading receiver with like 41 catches behind Vinny Anthony. I
can see that.
Great.
I mean, they are going to use so much more of these outlets and the flat routes and the stuff off of play action, but also zone reads and stuff like that. And the dreaded check downs that everyone hated before. Would you rather have a check down or an incomplete pass or a sack? I think I know the answer I want to hear. It's spamming that flat route. If you got nothing, Lance Mason's going to be sitting there. And then once you get used to seeing him in the flat, that's where they send him up the seam. That's when they send him to the corner. That's how you scheme for a tight end.
Curious, how many people, because we talked about depth chart, right? We talked about Ballard and Brooks. We know Vinny. We just talked about Mason. How many people can catch a decent amount of passes in this offense? How much are you able to spread that out? Because then you also have Tretch. You have Dupree, Dylan Jones. They've really liked Tyrell Henry. We've talked about Eugene Hilton. At what point do we start saying, no, that's too many bodies?
College football is different these days. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, it would probably be more. But you got to get your big time players their reps, and you got to get them their stat lines. I think the touches can get spread around pretty decently, but it could be a lot like if you ever back in the heyday of Sean Payton and Drew Brees with the Saints had Saints players on your fantasy team. 1 week, receiver one could go for 10 catches and 170 yards, and then he won't catch the ball for 4 or 5 weeks. Or a third string running back you've never heard of, breaks off 100 yards. That could be this offense where all of a sudden somebody goes quiet for a week or two, and then, wow, did you see Joseph Griffin had 2 touchdown catches? It could be like that. So at the end, it could kind of balance out, but I think you're going to get your core 3 or 4 receivers who are going to get the majority of the catches, a couple tight ends. I do think the running backs are going to get, I think all 4 of them are going to get reps. Maybe not big time reps, but I think there are going to be enough reps that all of them are involved.
Man, I love
this.
I can talk
just based on who it is.
Yeah, I agree. I think Akers going to get involved, and I think those other 3 are as well. We're going to get into a little bit actually next. We're going to take one more quick second. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about saving plays. Does Coach believe in maybe keeping a couple things under the hood week 1 and 2 for Bama? Or is that something fans talk about but it's not realistic? We're going to talk about that next. Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show over at Rugiet. Guys, I know we've probably all heard of Cialis. We've probably all heard of Viagra. If you've tried them even, but maybe you're looking for something beyond the usual pill. Maybe it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain, boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue, and it kicks in fast, on average 15 minutes, and effects can last up to 36 hours. So you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Right now, head over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege. Use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Coach, let's get back into this. I want to start here, though. Please take a minute to talk about the incredible stuff you do, all the work you got coming up this season, how people can find you.
Yep. As usual, it's still the Dairy Raid. Going to try to got my access back to all 22. Fingers crossed we'll keep it there. Going to work a couple of different aspects with that, maybe a little bit more basic, a little bit easier to digest on YouTube. Going to do full game breakdowns every play on Substack. Got a couple of things in the fire. We'll see how things go. A lot of it's going to depend on if that all 22 gets there. But as I always say, I'm the niche within the niche of Wisconsin football content. It's all about the nerdy stuff, the X's and O's, the players in the field. I'm not a pundit. I see it how it actually is happening on the field, at least from my opinion. So, and hopefully give that back to the Badger fans a little bit to enhance what they see as well.
I think you make people smarter. I think you bring a real amount of honest value to the community, and I know I appreciate it. I've followed your work for a long time. I encourage other people to go check you out as well. Let me ask you this again. Maybe this is more of a player versus coach thing. Fans versus coach thing. Fans talk a lot about save plays. Keep as much as you can under the hood for week 3. We know we have Miami of Ohio, then we have Middle Tennessee. We should be able to beat those teams without throwing everything we have at them. Big picture, where are you at on saving plays, quote unquote, for tougher opponents down the road?
I think you have plays in your playbook that are built for specific opponents, specific defenses. You also need to see how teams react to similar plays in the games before you. I think one benefit for us is we're going to have watching Alabama play against Florida State and Gus Malzahn. Now, Gus Malzahn doesn't run this type of offense, but if you want to talk about all the eye candy and the motions and the shifts and all that kind of stuff, I mean, Malzahn is right up there. So you watch that film to unlock things within your offense that you can do. But I think, we see in this offense is all about having so many different ways to run the same plays. They have, I'm guessing, hundreds of variations of the wide zone, from personnel to motion to formation, whatever. And that allows them to, they have their core plays, the core offense that's going to be there every week that they're not hiding, that everyone's going to see. But then they have the variations that they know that, okay, this team's safety triggers on this type of motion. Okay, we're going to use this to open this up here. And everything builds off each other because our opponents see the film too. So we want them to see things that we do because we need to see what their reaction is going to be. And then you have to have your counter to the reaction. And that's where you're not necessarily saving things for opponents, but you have answers built into your system that when you get the answer that you expect, you have a counter to it. When you get something unexpected, you better have a counter to that. So do they need the entire playbook to beat Miami of Ohio? Probably not. They're going to be relatively vanilla, I would say. But they have so many different variations on just their basic scheme that all they're going to have to do is tweak a little bit, and they can keep the same plays and the same scheme going forward without having to change much.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And my other thought on this was Grimes has been around for a while. Like,
he's played Alabama before. I mean, he's not scared of Alabama.
And they're going to have a good read on him regardless of what we hide or not. Like, they're going to know what he wants to do. I almost look at it like you need to get better at doing what you do. So they need the reps. Rep what you got to do. Pace Miami of Ohio, pace Middle Tennessee. You're not going to surprise Alabama. There's not like 2 or 3 EA Sports, because you play college football online. There's a couple gimmicky plays that you can just cheese people with. That's not going to happen against Bama. So I don't prescribe to it. I think you pace those two teams, rep what you got to rep, and then you worry about Bama when Bama gets here, because this program needs to really play well week 1 and 2, and that's where my focus would be. And then let the chips fall at Alabama is how I would look at it.
Yeah, you got to run your offense. I mean, and that's the thing. It's you have to do what you want to do, and then you have to do what you want to do in reaction to what your opponents do. You can't sit back because if you let's say you save a big chunk of your playbook or whatever for Alabama, and then it doesn't work. Well, now what?
Yeah,
you have a big chunk of your playbook that you can't use, or whatever. So sure, week 1, week 2, you're going to be a little bit vanilla, but you also want to put something out there so you can elicit a reaction from the defense. You have to get a reaction from the defense in order to counter it. It's especially when you play against a team who is on paper much better than you. We have to be counter punchers, not punchers against Alabama. And if we're going to have a shot against these better teams that we play against, it's going to come in the counter punch game, and it's going to come on us reacting to what they do to us.
Who's a player? Finish it up here. And great show as always when we get Coach Anderson on. Who's a player you're really excited to watch this year? Offense, defense, doesn't matter. One player that when that game film comes on, you're going to maybe zoom in on him first.
I gotta try to think of one that's not the typical, because I could easily say Dylan Jones. I could say any of the running backs. I'm really curious about the front 7. And I have my guys who are my favorites that I've watched all summer. And you Charles Perkins and Corey Walker, those type of guys, you're excited to see. I'm really excited to see Mason Reiger get back on the field. He's a guy that we've known for a couple months, and we've only seen him rep very briefly. But if he hasn't endeared himself to the heart of many Badger fans with his attitude and how he takes things and how he's mentoring young players in the background of press conferences, and that's all you're watching. You're not watching Mike Tressel do his interview. You're watching Mason Reiger in the background teach Mason Posa how to do pass rush moves. That's the kind of stuff that endears a player to me. So if I'd say that's definitely a player I'm looking forward to watching.
Absolutely love it, man. Can't wait. We're a couple days away. Coach Anderson, as always, thank you. Friend of the show. friend of mine, honestly, really smart guy, and he makes us smart for being here. Go check out his content over the Dairy Raid. Coach, thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to do, now that football's back, I'm sure we're hopefully going to do more of these as well on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk to y'all later.